come to order. Madam Clerk, call the roll.
Council Kadim?
Here.
Council Kilby?
Here.
Council Liberty LeBeau? Council Viveras? Chairman Long?
Yeah. Council LeBeau and Viveras have, Council LeBeau and Viveras have called and said they were going to be a little late, so we'll get on with what we have to do. Pursuant to the open meeting law, any person may make an audio or video recording of this public meeting or may transmit the meeting through any medium. Attendees are therefore advised that such recordings or transmissions are being made, whether perceived or unperceived, by those present and are deemed acknowledged and permissible. Okay, so we're starting. Citizen input, we have anybody sign up for citizen input? Anybody here wanting to participate, citizen input? Seeing no one, we'll move on to 2. Number 2 is, that going to be in this package here?
Yes.
Traffic handicap parking. I think what we need on that one is emergency preamble on that, right?
Motion so made.
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded for emergency preamble. These are for handicap parking on Bogle, Dwelly, Hutton, and Pittman Street. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. Preamble passes. Number 3, proposed traffic ordinance miscellaneous referred on 5/14.
You need to put number 2 for all readings.
Oh, sorry. Motion, yeah, I would entertain.
Motion for all reading.
I saw number 2, I'm sorry. With the emergency preamble, number 2 is a motion to pass through all readings.
So moved. Second.
Made and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Adopted. Now we move on to 3, correct? Number 3 is traffic miscellaneous. This is for, these are stop intersections designated by the following: Locust Street, Spruce Street, and section 2 is, relates to handicap parking on Allsop Street, Ballard Street, Eagle Street, Hood Street, Mount Hope Avenue, Prospect Street, Rodman Street, South Main Street, Stowe Street, and Warren Street. What's that?
Strikeouts on the handicap.
That's a strikeout, right?
Yes.
Yep, so those handicaps are coming down. And I have a motion to,
Motion to adopt.
Second.
all those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Been adopted. Number 4 is proposed ordinance personnel water department modifications. This is, chapter relates to personnel. I guess it's just to go in with.
Terry's here.
Mr. Sullivan, you want to come down and just tell us the basics of this?
So we have proposed modification to 2 positions within the water department. The first is we have a current position called Water Maintenance Worker 1 with CDL and backhoe license. That's the top rate for a Water Maintenance 1 worker. We have a current worker who is a certified welder who has been doing all of our welding work, saving us tens of thousands of dollars. He has some medical issues that doesn't allow him to get a CDL or a backhoe. Fantastic worker, but because of those restrictions, he hasn't been able to move up. So for that 1 worker, we're asking that title of Water Maintenance Worker 1, CDL and backhoe be modified to Water Maintenance 1, CDL and backhoe, or certified welder. And within the provided job descriptions, they have to be certified by Mass DOT, which he is. Really fantastic worker. Saves us thousands on welding. We do almost all of our welding for our trucks. He's made a big rock-in screening facility, so when we take the dirt out of the ground, we can screen it and reuse of it, most of it. We used to have to dispose of it at a pretty high cost. So for that 1 worker, that would allow him to be promoted from Water Maintenance Worker 1 to this newly titled position. That would increase his pay by $3,221.40 per year, about $1.50 an hour. One of our best workers, and Because of that restriction and not getting the license, other workers have surpassed him, and I haven't been able to move him up. This would allow me to move him up and keep all of our welding in-house.
Is that a-
Sorry.
I'm just, they're hourly rate on those, right, correct, or is that
Yes.
salary?
Yes.
So
The first one, the one I just spoke about, is hourly rate.
The welder.
Yes. The second position, water quality manager, is modification to an existing employee. This would become,
I guess before we get there.
Sure.
So just, so the job description, the water maintenance worker, right, so that the essential job duties, he's able to perform all the other related job duties
Yes.
outside of CDL
And backhoe.
and backhoe.
yes, and we've
And
had,
he will be doing that? Or primary, is the primary function is just gonna be welding?
no, he does all of the other work. Actually, he's the one that's the lead on repairing and servicing fire hydrants throughout the city.
You just can't
If-
drive or operate a backhoe.
If and when we need welding to be done, we'll call him in, he'll take care of all the welding, but he-
I'm
he's
just
a
saying
good-
on him, he's an hourly rate. What's his rate? And what's he going to?
That should,
Well, it's the bi-weekly rate that's here. This is the bi-weekly
Yeah, it's
rate.
got the bi-weekly, but it
So
doesn't tell me by hour.
Oh, it
So
doesn't
it's a
say hourly.
54, so step 5 would be a $54 increase, right? So
it's $1.50 increase per hour.
Bring him from.
The one that was
what to what?
striking out is the effective of 2017.
So the annual base without overtime will be increased from 38,259 to 41,506, and I can calculate that, 41,506.
So taking out this and moving to this.
So these are
Yeah.
not,
Because we're
Union
adding this,
positions?
or
What's that?
certified
This is
welder.
not a
So
union
this is
position?
out. and this
It is a
Correct,
union position,
yes.
the union has already agreed to the job title change.
So it's $1 plus increase.
$1.50 an hour increase, comparable to what the employees with a CDL and a backhoe license are making.
so it's just a question, so why do we have it called out if it's a union position and not just a position that's agreed to in the collective bargaining agreement? Do we have all the positions that are agreed to
In ordinance,
in ordinance?
we do.
We're just changing one. Because we can hire somebody
So
as a,
interesting.
as a CDL.
Because it's really it's an agreement between the collective bargaining agreement and, the union and, I guess, the city, but I would assume that the agreement would list all of the positions that are agreed to, right?
This one's being changed, however.
No, I know that, I guess in my mind, I expect to see it in the CBA and not necessarily the ordinance, I guess. That's-
Yeah, so they're in both, they're in ordinance and they're in the CBA. So I proposed this to the union. This proposal came up after the last round of CBA negotiations were done. I proposed it, I had the union sign off on it, and within the agreement that the union signed off on it, it's understood that city council and mayoral approval will be needed because of the ordinance requirement. And the new annual rate comes up to $19.95 an hour. And the old
What's
rate would have been $1.50
What's
less.
that yearly? Do you know what the yearly-
So the new rate yearly will be $41,506. The older rate that he's at now for water maintenance one worker without the license is $38,259. So the differential is $3,221.40 a year. That breaks down to $1.50 an hour.
Are we paying for his certification as well?
No, he's already certified.
So we don't have to, that's not one that needs to get renewed?
No.
Is it just the certification is?
Any renewals, he's taken care of, and haven't agreed to take care of that.
Yeah,
Nothing.
go with your motion then.
Well, I think you need the water quality, right? So just do one motion.
So the second position is a new title for a non-union position of water quality manager. That existing employee, current title is chief operator or water treatment plant supervisor. We needed and wanted to add an additional license requirement to that for a distribution system level 4. He's a treatment level 4 state license. We need an additional D4 license. And we currently only have one person at the treatment plant that's non-union, so this will also help with the discipline and management of the workers. This is an existing employee, been with us over 10 years, excellent employee, and this will convert him to a salaried position proposed at $60,000 per year. His current, so that would be salary, no overtime. His current base rate without overtime is $53,672. So on base rates, that's an increase of $6,345.26. But at his current position, he gets paid for all overtime, and actually in calendar year 2018, he made a little over $67,000. So what would happen is he would become part of the management team, continue to do his base duties. He would continue to come in for emergencies, but he wouldn't be covering night shifts when somebody doesn't show up unless it's a matter of last resort. Excellent employee. He's gotten the D4 license, which the state is strongly advising that we get. Currently, we only have 3 of them, myself, Paul Ferlin, and Mr. Griffin, who would be the water quality manager, would be the 3rd.
Satisfied with the information. No questions from me?
Just a quick question. So, so the salaried employee, I know obviously he's not entitled to comp time, but flex time, would he be eligible for flex time?
So flex time, I'm not sure the pure
Policy.
definition, but we do with all of our salary employees. We expect a minimum of 40 hours a week, and we press for, what I do is 50 hours a week. That's the goal. So if an employee is working 50 or 55 hours a week and they want to leave early on a particular day, they ask me. I have them all keep time sheets, so I see the hours per week through every monthly sheet. It's worked out well with us. The salaried employees have not abused it. We watch the timesheets very much, and generally all of them are in excess of over 40 hours per week.
So it's really not a formal thing, it's just an informal thing within your office?
Yes.
And they're not allowed to buy that back, right?
No.
So it's not like it's
Absolutely.
accumulated or anything like that, okay. I yield.
I'd be rich if I could buy all mine.
Be real rich.
I agree. I'll echo that statement, but I yield.
There's a motion to adopt. 2 seconds. Sure.
Oh, yes, I'm sorry.
Motion to adopt has been made and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Number 5 is the water rate increase.
So we have a proposed increase of, actually in 5 and 6, 10 cents on each, 10 cents on water, 10 cents on sewer for the upcoming fiscal year. The statistical average for a single-family user, a family, is 109 gallons per day. So at that 10-cent rate increase for water, that would increase their annual bill by $5.30. It's going to be a similar number when we talk about sewer next at 10 cents, another $5.30 per year. So the average family would see an increase, combined water and sewer, of $10.60 per year.
Councilor Kadim.
So the letter that we received from the mayor, this is his request to approve, am I understanding that?
Yes.
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
I know sometimes we get into this, we see a letter and it wasn't really, it was the city council that, I just want to know that this is the administration's recommendation.
It is.
Okay.
So normally for water and sewer budgets and rates, I, with my staff, put them together. We discuss it with the financial team, with the mayor, and if we're in agreement, then we work together to get the proposal, but the proposal does come from the
No,
mayor.
I know, it's an election year, so how statements come out of people's mouth kind of change, and they're trying to kick it over to the city council. And you know, I accept responsibility for the votes that I take, so I just want to be clear that on the record that this is a recommendation from the administration coming down. So just in terms of that, Ms. Sullivan, I know you do a phenomenal job of trying to make sure that we absolutely reduce as much cost as we possibly can to make sure that there's not significant increase in the rate. Can you just talk a little bit about what we've done to do that?
So overall, over a number of years, the water department staff in 2003 was 69 employees. Today, we are 46. The sewer department operational staff through the contract at the treatment plant for Veolia is 50. So of that, the staff that takes care of the treatment plant and the pump stations is 40. That number hasn't changed since 1987, so we've managed to keep that staff at that particular level. The other 10 through the contract take care of the 200 miles of sewer, 100 miles of drainage, 5,000 catch basins, 5,000 manholes. Prior to 1997, that was managed within DPW, not completely to my satisfaction, and we came to an agreement, transferred it out. Back in 1997, that number was 8, and a few years later, it's been bumped to 10. So since, for the past close to 18 to 20 years, that number has been maintained at 10. So we've managed to minimize the staff, keep that staff at a low level, lower than many communities, and we do monitor every cost and try to minimize where we are. But there are those fixed mandatory costs that come through, power being the biggest one, electricity for sewer about $1.7 million a year, for water, I think $750,000 a year, then chemicals are approaching about $500,000 a year each. I will say the biggest challenge that we have is the continued regulations and continued mandates for what we do. We have managed to continue to comply without significant increases in staffing, but it is a challenge. The debt incurred has been one of the biggest driving matters in both of the budgets. That's a negative, but the positive of that is the tremendous amount of work that's been done that beyond 20 to 25 years ago had been ignored for many decades. I've showed you the pieces of tuberculated pipe. When I came here in 1987, raw sewage was pouring into Mount Bay every year. So there has been a tremendous improvement, but the continued requirements to comply with the expanding regulations is a challenge. So debt has been one of the biggest driving factors. And we have been able each year to try to minimize the cost by utilizing free cash that falls out at the end of the year. And we're doing that this year to a pretty significant degree, resulting in a relatively minimal increase.
Do you know how much that has fallen off on average yearly for the water department? Is it enough to kind of just level fund the debt service, or? And if you don't have the number,
I don't have the number with me today, but it's not, because each year we're adding about $5 million to an additional phase
Yep.
of the water. So in front of you, just the other evening
Right,
was
was
4.9 million. So we're not dropping it off as fast as we're adding it
Okay.
on annually.
We're balancing it a little bit.
We are trying to balance it, but we've got some projects. If you think of Phase 19 as being the 19th year, and we're borrowing for 20 years, we're not even phasing off the first year yet.
Yeah. That's right.
So
Think about it that way, yeah.
I'm
If you look at it
predicting
that way,
Right.
Right.
in the next 5 years, a couple of those early phases will be coming off, but with the 20-year loans being, again, Phase 19, we haven't retired any, but looking at Phase 1 and Phase 2, we're looking at 2023 of some of those numbers coming off. So we're getting to a point where we'll start retiring some of the debt.
The Veolia contract, when's that expiring?
2024, so we're in a 10-year contract from 2014 to 2024.
Thank you, I yield.
You're saying if some of that debt's gonna retire at 20 years, then that work that was done 20 years ago, what's the lifespan of that work? 20 years, 30 years, 50 years?
So generally, the lifespan of pipe is predicted at 50 years, so that's a conservative prediction. Obviously, we've had pipe go for 135 years. The new water pipe that we're putting in is ductile iron with a cement liner. So the cast iron pipe that we put in the late 1800s, early 1900s was cast iron with no liner. So what happens there is the water in this region, because of the bedrock of granite, is a little bit aggressive, a little bit on the acid side. So it's attacking the inside of the pipe, and the tuberculation you've seen is actually layer of rust after layer of rust. The new ductile iron cement line pipe has a layer of cement blown in to buffer the attack of that water against the metal. So those pipes I'm expecting to get 100 to 150 years out of, although the manuals predict conservatively 50 years. Mechanical work that we do at treatment plants has a 15 to 20-year life, but most of the work on the water jet has been pipe. And when we talk about a mechanical life of 15 to 20 years, the wastewater treatment plant is approaching 40 years old, and we're just
Well, that's
starting the
one of the things I
rebuild
was
now.
trying to
So
think about is going forward is what's going to be needed going forward, so that if we start to retire some of this debt, we're gonna probably pick up other debt on the other side to fix other things.
yeah, the bigger debt that I get worried about on the long term is additional and new regulations.
Oh, yeah.
So we've talked to you on the sewer side of things of the federal EPA's push on nitrogen removal at wastewater treatment plants. That's something I've been fighting against for over 15 years. And we do lobby and attend the hearings and work with groups to fight against some of this stuff. Not that we don't want a perfect environment, but we've got to balance what people are able to pay versus the environmental improvement. And what we've done so far with the CSO project has been a dramatic improvement in the bay, but it comes at a significant cost.
Any other questions?
I'm sorry, I do. So what's a 1 cent increase, what would that generate in revenue?
1 cent,
Yeah.
$30,000.
$30,000 for every-
Let me rephrase that. Water, it comes in at $31,000. Sewer, it comes in at $26,000.
So I just see that we're using retained earnings, so if we didn't use retained earnings of the 440, what did I say that, 440,000, what would we have to increase the rate to?
So on the water side, 440. We would need to increase it another $1.41.
And we didn't use any retained earnings last year? Or is-
Last year in water, we did not. In sewer, we used a small amount.
So would you say $1.40, is that what you said?
$1.41 is the value of the 440 for sewer, water.
And the goal has been to retain $100,000 annually
Yep.
of the free cash to get us to the $1 million. So that free cash or that retainage that we're using in this particular budget will still keep whole the $100,000 surplus for the current year set aside.
Okay, so what's the balance for retained?
So right now, we are at $400,000 in each water and sewer stabilization fund, and we've set aside out of the retained earnings that we didn't use another $100,000. So in the coming year, there'll be $500,000 in water stabilization, $500,000 in sewer stabilization. And as you probably recall, about 5 years ago, on this floor, we talked about that, and my goal was 10 years to get $1 million set aside in each of the water sewer funds.
And to maintain that as a balance, right? Is that
Yes.
so? Okay. All right. Thank you, I yield.
Motion?
Motion to adopt.
Second.
Motion to adopt has been made and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We're on to section. Proposed ordinance sewer rate increases. Stop marking this in the list.
So I have a bad habit of talking about water and sewer at the same time. So
I'm just looking for a
Understandable.
motion on this one. And he's already explained what's going on.
Motion to adopt.
Motion to adopt has been made. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion made and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Thank you.
Item number 7,
Thank you, Terry.
proposed ordinance, personal safety officer, it was referred on 5/14/19. Can, administration is here.
Excuse me.
Just give us a brief overrun on this.
Certainly, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Effective as of February 2019, the city of Fall River, along with other municipalities in the state of Massachusetts, has been required to come into complete conformance with the Occupational Safety and Health Administration safety requirements. While the city has routinely engaged in trying to implement policies that address the employee safety, this rises to a whole new level of requirement, not the least of which is to assure that there's adequate training by all of our employees regarding the operation of all of our equipment. They have to use the proper safety gear, use proper procedures when in an area that might pose some sort of health or safety risk. And so given the magnitude of the undertaking, we're recommending the creation of the position before you for safety officer. And while we fully expect that all of the associated departments will be actively engaged in assisting in this effort, we felt it was important to have a point person that was able to monitor the maintenance of the records, to process any investigations that have to occur in the event there are accidents, to assure that trainings are kept current, and that we meet all of the requirements. And
Is there anybody doing this
is
right
a
now?
new position. Pardon me?
Is there anybody in this position at the present time?
There is not, no. We've included the position and the funding for the position in the FY '20 budget, and pending the council's approval, we would move forward to fill the position.
So has anyone been performing, as you stated, I haven't read the legislation, you know, but as you're saying, there's a heightened level of, you know, regulations. But is anyone presently performing these duties?
Not specifically, Counselor, but the facilities department, facilities maintenance department under Mr. Gallagher, and also his assistant Tammy Moutinho, they have personally undertaken to try to assist the city in addressing this. We've had state representatives come down and issue a seminar. We've had trainings already underway. But clearly, it's not part of their regular job description, and they've been doing their best, and actually, I should say, they've been doing yeoman's work trying to get all of this in place. But it's been determined that this really is a need across all departments. The expectation as well is that water and sewer enterprise accounts, Mr. Sullivan left us, but that they would also be contributing to the cost of this position.
Would it be more cost-effective to train someone presently, an employee, to perform these duties? Because with benefits, you're probably talking close to $100,000.
We are, but as you'll see in the job description, we are hoping for someone who has OSHA certification, who has a background in construction, building, and roadways, someone who's uniquely qualified, 3 to 5 years' experience in the field, and again, to take an existing employee and add those additional duties, we really don't have anyone that we feel could devote, the full-time attentions to the task that's required, given, as I said, the magnitude of the task before us. So we're hoping to get someone who's not only qualified and versed in this area, has some experience in this area, but someone who's going to be able to devote their full-time attention, to the tasks.
I yield, thank you.
Have we had any OSHA violations in the last 15 years?
I would venture to guess that we have had accidents that have happened within the departments, and that those accidents could have been, at least to some degree, a function of inadequate safety training and/or equipment protocol. So we clearly, I think, will benefit as a community to have this person and these new regulations in place. Clearly, employee safety has always been something that the city has attempted to preserve, but this certainly does raise it to a heightened level. And I would add that I think what the position and the regulations are now requiring is that we take a more proactive, preventative maintenance, if you will, approach to it, doing a lot of the trainings and that are necessary. And it's particularly important, we get a new piece of equipment, and we might train the employees that are on staff at the moment, but then if you get a new employee comes to a department, there's people working, they may not have that same level of training. So this is really going to ensure that all of the trainings are done in a timely manner as well. So I think we'll clearly benefit. Again, this was something that I understand the Baker-Polito administration implemented and required that all cities and towns conform with. So we are subject to this.
What does that mean when they say required to fully comply? What does that mean? I don't know what that means. If
Well,
we don't
we-
fully require, if we don't comply, what happens?
Comply with what?
That's what I'm saying. Like that. It just says required to fully comply with the Occupational Safety Health Administration regulations. I think we are already fully.
No,
Those-
Does the regulations mandate that we hire someone?
no, not at all. We're just suggesting that it's the most efficient way to deal with it. So right now, there are policies and procedures online for, and in fact, the state has been helpful in providing resources, but there are literally safety protocols, equipment protocols online for virtually every task that exists. There may be a few exceptions, and they would have to be modified for our particular work settings, but every single task
job.
that could cause an employee safety risk is required to have a written policy that explains the requirements for the equipment to be utilized, how it's to be utilized, how frequently. In some cases, there's repeat training that's
One
required.
person's going to be in charge of every worker in the city of Fall River for the OSHA requirements. Really?
Well, actually, Council,
that's a
that,
big
as
job.
I
That's
referenced
a lot of
earlier,
work.
and I agree with you, and as I referenced earlier, and I'll reiterate, it's been made very clear to all of our departments, and we have had meetings with the departments, the department managers. It's been made very clear to them that they have to get actively engaged in the development of this policy and procedures document, that they have to get actively involved in facilitating the training. But again, we really need someone to oversee and make sure that there's full compliance all
Is
around.
there any certification at the state level for OSHA certification?
There is, yeah, there's an OSHA certification requirement that we're
So why
including
would we just
in our.
require our department heads to get OSHA certified?
Well, again,
Employees.
Counselor, it's really the magnitude of the work involved, and I
That's it, one
could
person.
get you a sample copy. I didn't bring the documents, but the manuals for all of
Huge.
the tasks, it's
I don't-
huge.
no, I
And they
don't
have to
disagree.
be peculiar to the piece of equipment that they're operating.
And the
so
individual
it's
operations, whether they're working at
everything,
the sewer plant, or they're working on a
exactly.
backhoe, or they're maintenance.
Confined
or they're-
spaces is one with high risk. So we've made it clear to the department heads that they have to
Simple
accept
use of a ladder,
responsibility.
Just the simple use of a ladder is, there's
Absolutely.
probably
There's
27 pages on how to properly use a ladder.
You're correct, Counselor, and we are required to have manuals in place that outline all of that material. So the department heads have gotten a good start on all of this, and again, we've been working in earnest towards compliance with this, but we just feel that there needs to be someone overseeing the ongoing compliance with these and the ongoing training that's required, so.
I'll yield for now. Councilor
you.
Kadim?
So what exactly is the requirement of the city?
We have been advised that all OSHA regulations at the federal level are now subject to adherence at the local community level.
That's always been the case, right? So I guess I'm trying to figure out what's changed. I mean, again, anytime we're adding a new position, I think we need to be able to justify it. I just personally, as one counselor, hate when we, and maybe hate's a strong word, but it's probably pretty accurate word, when we try to take things away from what we pay our department heads to do. So I think it's the department head's responsibility to make sure that every employee in their department is doing what they're supposed to be doing, is being trained on the equipment that they are supposed to be utilizing, and they need to make sure, and there's foremans that are hired as well to make sure that trainings are being done and the equipment's being utilized properly. I mean, a lot of the OSHA, regulation requirements is really a lot of common sense, right? So you get in a bucket truck, you're supposed to use a harness, you're supposed to be connected, you're not supposed to be in a position where you can fall out of the bucket. Now, I fully understand that, when you're going in and changing light bulb after light bulb, that sometimes that one time that you decide that you're not gonna click into the bucket truck, that's when the accident happens, right? So, but I don't know that we need somebody at $60,000 to go back and say, you really should be clipping into the harness truck. And OSHA does training themselves, right? So I think there's training that can be done. We have human resources that should be making sure that everybody who requires an OSHA certification maintains that license. The department head should maintain, obviously be keeping records to make sure that they're maintaining it. And I think we can have free seminars coming in for OSHA training. I don't know that we need to spend $60,000 on an individual to get caught up on all these departments. I mean, for one individual to be fluent on all the OSHA regulations in water and sewer department and the community maintenance facilities, traffic, parks, and I don't think that's gonna happen. And if you're telling me that the department heads are, which they should be required to make sure that there is compliance, and maintaining that compliance, I don't know that we need somebody else to oversee the department heads for $60,000. That's just me. I think $60,000 could go somewhere else, to be utilized.
Do we have anyone OSHA certified in our employ?
Not that I'm aware of, Counsel.
Any other questions?
I'll make a motion to grant leave to withdraw.
Second?
Motion been made and seconded to grant leave to withdraw. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Withdrawn. Number 8, proposed ordinance,
So
GIS
this,
specialist.
this position is one, there's no additional person that's going to be required. We have actually someone on staff who is performing these duties right now. However, the individual, this is really the creation of a new title that more specifically represents what the individual actually does on a day-to-day basis. And it's within the engineering division, and we do have Mr. Frey here that he'll be able to address it further for you. And again, the proposed salary is the same as what the individual is earning right now. So as we see it, it's the creation of a title and certainly a job description that is better suited to what the individual is actually performing within the department.
Okay, within that, just a quick question. If we're going to be adding an additional, or a better, it's not a new position, it's the same person, are we removing the old position?
No, Counsel, the title of junior civil engineer will remain within ordinance. We're just creating, as I said, a new title for this individual based on what they're actually
So they're gonna
performing.
move laterally, basically?
It's all it is, Counsel. It's a new title, again, that actually captures what the individual does on a day-to-day basis.
Do you have, how many, what was it, junior engineer? We're moving somebody from the junior engineer?
That's correct.
All right, so how many junior engineers do you have right now?
Currently, we have 2. And we
One's
would-
moving.
And one is moving over.
Okay. How you?
Motion to adopt? No, I'm sorry.
I know you can start the motion, but.
No, go ahead.
No,
Okay.
no.
So when, we've got the 2 junior civil engineers, one's being moved over, so are we adding a new FTE?
No,
So we're gonna eliminate, so there would only be 1 junior civil engineer?
correct.
And then the job description is
GIS
solely,
specialist.
is solely GIS inputting into the GIS. Now, what exactly are we putting into the GIS system? Is it everything? Is it just layers for conservation and planning boundaries, or are we going extensive where, and I know it's in the engineering office, so I get that it's probably a lot of street work, but are we also incorporating fire hydrants? Last time fire hydrants were checked, are we including documentation from building and incorporating it into the GIS system? So, for instance, some communities, I'll take Mansfield, for instance, they've got a GIS specialist that is truly for GIS, and it's really data entry and collection of all the data. So when you go
Yep.
into their GIS system, the police department can go in and say, okay, we've got a firearm license that's been issued at this address, so when you have a call that's being dispatched to 110 Main Street, they can pull it up, they can know that there's somebody with dementia, or there's a license to carry that's been issued there, if there's any outstanding building issues or code violations. Is that what we're looking to do, or is it simply just for engineering purposes?
At this point, it's a continuation of existing job duties, so it is primarily for engineering purposes, although we routinely interact with the GIS specialist that works in the water department for their infrastructure management, as well as there's a new police department GIS specialist, and we coordinate with them as well. But a lot of it has to do with maintaining our database of addresses, working with the assessors and maintaining the GIS system for our land plots, and all of the current functions that we currently utilize.
How many layers do we have for the GIS? Do you know?
Well, we maintain a number of layers more in CAD, really, than we do in GIS. And in terms of what is regularly maintained in GIS, it's, I think there are about 25. It includes zoning, it includes,
Wetlands?
excuse me?
Wetlands?
I don't know that it includes wetlands, although we routinely pull those in from Mass GIS.
Okay.
So there's a lot of overlap that we're able to utilize. And our GIS specialist is fully capable of grabbing all of that free information that's available through Mass GIS and pulling that into maps that he routinely creates for other departments or internally.
Okay, so in terms of the junior civil engineer, what's the pay scale versus this GIS specialist? Is there-
It's the same pay scale,
So it's the same,
yeah.
okay. Is there any licenses that are required for the civil engineer, or?
At this time, there is not a particular requirement, it's an experience-based position.
Okay, so they're not
They're not required to have an EIT or a PE.
PE, right, okay. And so there's no elimination, there's no addition to a new position, so we're not gonna look to add two additional, or at least an additional body into the,
Not at this time, no.
okay. I yield for now.
Council LeBeau?
So we're not getting rid of one of the junior engineer positions?
We are moving an entire position that was a junior civil engineer position into the title of GIS specialist.
But there's still going to be two junior civil engineers in the budget?
No,
So isn't that what you had asked? If we were gonna be eliminating?
We're not
one of-
eliminating from what they were told. And we're
so
keeping two
we're
junior
not
engineers.
eliminating a
We only
title,
have a
but
person.
we're effectively eliminating a position under that title, because it's currently budgeted for two positions under that title. We
Moving
will only
somebody
budget for
laterally.
one position under
That was
that
my question, we're
title.
only gonna budget for one, but there's going to be two.
Same FTEs.
Got it. Thank you, I yield.
Any other questions? Entertain a motion.
Motion to adopt.
Motion has been made to adopt. Is there a second?
Second.
Is there a second? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? You guys have it. And approved. We are now 9, proposed ordinance zoning wind energy facilities and kennels.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Mr. Roth is actually at a seminar and could not join us this evening. Effectively, which one, do you have a preference, which one I do first? I could do the easy one, which is the kennels. Or we're
I was gonna say
actually,
the easy one's the win.
all right, well, it could be, I think they're both easy, but the kennel ordinance is simply bringing us in compliance with state law. So at the present time, the state defines that a kennel is more than 4 dogs over 3 months of age, I believe it is. And We have 3, so we're simply moving our 3 to 4.
I
to
only
be
have one
consistent.
question on that part of it, and this goes back to some of our other ordinances, which has been pointed out to me, is when we read this, it says, including a pack or collection of more than 4 dogs, 3 months old or over, owned or kept by a person. So if we've got 5 people, and each of those 5 people own 4 dogs, and they're living in a 3-family,
Commercial.
What's
It's gotta be commercial.
no, it doesn't say that.
Yeah, but
It doesn't say it.
I
The
don't
breeding
disagree, yeah.
says for a single premise, whether maintained for breeding, boarding, sale, training, hunting, or other purposes, and including any shop where dogs are on sale, and also including every pack or collection of more than 4 dogs, 3 months old, over, owned, or kept by a person on a single premise. And my question is, a person on a single premise. It's either a premise or it's not a premise. It shouldn't be a single person. I mean, if it's gonna be an address, it can't be, well, I got one person owns 4, this other person owns 4, this other person owns 4, that other person, we got 16 dogs. How do you,
In the same premise?
correct?
Is that what you're
I think
suggesting?
it should just be to the premise. Just my guess.
Yeah, I think your question is whether or not it's a pet versus, I mean, if you've got 4 dogs that are pet purposes,
Well, I'm sure there's people out there that have more than 4 dogs as pets.
Right.
I mean, are they gonna be a kennel? That's my question. I don't think it's clear enough, and that's what I'm saying. And I think what this is going to say is anybody with 4 or more dogs on a premise has to have a kennel license. And I think that's reasonable.
Okay, well, we would, again, we were trying to go with compliance, but if the council would like to modify the language to be clearer, we're certainly open to that. That's the intent, so.
Well, that's just my only question on
Yeah.
that one, so I think it just confuses me, so I'm not, it's up to whatever the committee wants to do.
It does reference on a single premise, but I guess, to your point, it could be
Person.
interpreted.
Premise. A single person on a
It
single
says-
premise.
One pack of collection of dogs.
Yep, keep going,
On a single premise,
keep going.
whether maintained for breeding, boarding, training, right, okay.
Go down further.
Or collection of
sentence.
more than 4 dogs owned or kept
kept
by
by
a
a
person
person.
on a single premise.
Correct. I don't think we need a single person, just on a premise. That's it.
Oh, so you'd like to strike out by a person?
That's what I'd say.
We could certainly
Maybe
entertain
on
that.
commercial purposes.
Yeah, that would be appropriate.
I just think we gotta think about that language and then ask the Corporation Council maybe to review it with the state law and just make sure that it's consistent. The other question I have is, and not necessarily for Corporation Council unless he can answer it, but I don't think he's a Board of Health agent, so my question is, just in terms of, once we have somebody that's going out for a kennel license, that triggers Board of Health inspections, right? So if you got 4 or more dogs, and I know we don't run into septic systems here in the city of Fall River, or they're limited, I should say, because we've got sewer. But with somebody with septic, then the Board of Health has to go out, really review the septic system to make sure that the capacity is there, the waste disposal of the animals. So I think we should try to get that information, at least from what the impact is from Board of Health. And I know we're just changing the numbers, but if we're talking about somebody who owns 4 dogs, and we're going back and saying that you gotta get a kennel license, what does that trigger for inspections and requirements and things of that nature? I just wanna make sure that we understand that. And at the end of the day, it may just be a requirement of Massachusetts general law, or the CMR, whichever it is. So the language is coming in for a kennel, the definition of a kennel.
Well,
So-
if you want me to check it, I will. I think one of the things that you have to be careful of, if you don't strike a person, is you wind up in a situation that they wound up with in Westport. We have 110 animals on
One single
a
property.
single premise, and they're all saying, well, no, that cow's not mine, it's hers,
And that's what I'm
the
saying.
goat is his, and they were having a very difficult time enforcing it.
That's bond inspections, though. It's a little different than kennel inspections.
Well, I'm just-
Yeah, no, I
it's the same
know
thing.
what you're saying, but I just, and again, but I think it can be a single person, it doesn't have to. Like, if you strike it,
Okay, just for the sake of argument, you got a 3-family house, okay, and you've got 3 separate owners, and they all own 3 dogs. You've got 9 dogs on one premise.
Yeah.
I'm like, I don't wanna
I
live
agree,
next to that.
I-
All of a sudden, you get a problem that dogs are barking, and they're all barking, because they're all,
And
and
maybe
you
my-
can't do anything about it because there's 9 dogs going crazy next door.
And maybe my mindset's not accurate, but the logic that I'm trying to use is that it's commercial based, right? So it's, in my mind, it's for commercial purposes. So, again, when we start talking about, maintain for breeding, boarding, sale, training, hunting, or other purposes, including any shop where dogs are on sale, right? So it just continues to suggest that it's all commercial based. That's, it may
Just
be,
state that it's commercial based.
and maybe that's what we need to, maybe language that we need to add. But again, I'm just curious, and I don't know if it's a CMR or a Massachusetts general law that dictates the definition of the kennel, but I'd like to know what that language states from the state, and then just, again, what is the trigger from a Board of Health standpoint? And potential, so, because I think all the codes really do fall into Board of Health and not building, but
Nonprofits.
I would just ask building as well, if there's anything that triggers the building code.
Well, they have kennel licenses. They're enforced and-
Yeah.
So what's your pleasure? What are we doing?
Well,
Okay,
we-
motion to table?
Second.
But there's 2 pieces to this.
If I may. Both of those are on one ordinance, first of all. Both of these are zoning ordinances. They've already had a public hearing, and we have advertised, notified the other communities. This would need to be completely finished, it has to be ordained by July 22nd, or it dies, and you would need to start the process again,
God.
just letting you know.
July 26th?
We have time.
July 22nd.
22nd, plenty of time.
We
But
can
it would
certainly
need to,
check
if you
that.
table it, it would
Here
need to
and
then
be
come
at
out
a
of here
meeting,
for
yeah.
first reading,
Yeah,
and then it would have to
Second
go through second reading.
emergency preamble.
That's not really an emergency situation though for a zoning ordinance. I'm just
Yeah.
throwing that in there, so you're aware.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. So,
So what's the pleasure of
The
the
motion to
committee?
table number 9, the city planner will be here for, well, on the first issue with the. with
Can we
the-
split this? That's number 1, because
Yes,
it's
yes.
on the same issue.
You could
So I think the
pass
first motion
section
would be to
1.
separate the kennels out, and if you're wishing to table it, we'll table it. We're gonna wish it to
You could process.
amend it, we amend it, but we have to separate it.
Okay. Yep, you're the chairman.
Well, I need the motion, so I'm just,
Motion to separate.
there's been a motion to separate the kennels from the wind energy, has been made
Second.
and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Is there any motion with regards to the kennel piece at this point?
Motion to table.
Second.
Motion to table has been made and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Kennels have been. All right, now let's go to the simple one, the wind energy.
yes, okay, so, thank you. What this is attempting to do is to add uses to our current WTOD, Water Transit Oriented District, to allow for wind-related uses. We do have a separate ordinance regarding, that regulates the construction of the actual wind
I'm
turbines.
sorry,
We're not-
I don't mean to interrupt. So section 3, so the use table, but that all, so the use table, the change is really for the kennel, right? So would we table,
Section 2.
This is-
no, I know that, but
sorry,
section,
86-36?
we tabled, there's a change to section 3, right? So that's by striking out section 86-36, tables of use, retail, restaurant, consumer services, uses, G, kennel in its entirety and inserting in place thereof the following. G, kennel containing more than 4 canines 3 months of age or older, so we would
It
have
would be
to,
section 2 and 3 would be tabled.
yeah, so we'll just make a motion that we table section 3 as well.
Motion has been made to table section 3 as regard to kennels. Is there a second?
Second.
Made and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay, so we're still back on the wind.
So-
Clean that up a little bit. Thank you.
Regarding the proposed change to section 1, again, we're adding wind-related research and development, processing, fabrication, manufacturing, assembly, packaging, and just support services, but not the erection or utilization of the actual wind turbines. This is just intended to support manufacturers that may be engaged in the wind industry within that district, which is located along the waterfront. And some of the key attributes, if you will, for successful wind energy area is access to water and rail. And these areas do have those facilities located in and along our waterfront district. So we're simply adding these as allowable uses within that existing district.
Any questions? Motion?
Motion to adopt?
Motion to adopt has been made. Any seconds?
Second.
Seconded. All those in favor?
I'm sorry.
Okay, discussion?
So just as an allowable use, there would be no, what's the requirement for review? So no special permit would be needed or anything like that, it's just,
Not if it's an allowed use within the district.
all right, there you go.
Any other questions? Motion has been made and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimous? Told you that was gonna be easy.
Mr. Chairman, remind me never to speculate again.
Okay, number 10, I need a motion to lift from the table. That was tabled on, where am I? I think it's in my next packet here. Hold on.
5-7,
It's on what, 10?
tabled on 5-7.
Motion to
Yeah,
lift.
tabled on
the
5-7. Motion has been made to lift. Is there a second?
Second.
Made and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, opposed? Okay, this is a resolution requesting that stipends outside of ordinance, state law, collective bargaining agreements cannot be granted to an employee without the approval of city council. Be it resolved that the Committee on Ordinance and Legislation meet to discuss the drafting of an ordinance requiring any stipend above $2,000 be sent to city council as an ordinance for approval. That's where we're at. So, who'd like to kick this off?
I can.
There you go.
As I recall, when we discussed this last time, I think there was a general consensus that we had to start with a definition of a stipend. So what I've done is drafted a proposed definition of what a stipend would be. And at least in my mind, if and when we agree on what a stipend is, we can go to the next step, if there is one, of what to do about a stipend. But I think when we just, I have extras if we ran out.
We just need one more, just for the record.
Do you have extra?
This one.
I made 10, so. Oops. I want my paper clip.
Who needs one?
I never.
Go ahead.
And this kind of tracks my notes from the last meeting as far as what a stipend generally, I guess, is recognized to be, but certainly we can discuss either my thinking or your thinking or how you want to define a stipend.
I hate getting into definitions because they just grow and they just become this massive.
Well, it's kind of, as you wrestle with the problem, it becomes narrower because compensation is, as I said, backwards, it is generally set forth in ordinance or by the collective bargaining agreement or by contract or sometimes by state law. So any change in the ordinance would be here anyway. It wouldn't be a stipend. I think we've done, or the committee has done some of that tonight. The collective bargaining agreements speak for themselves. They're all in there as compensation. And the contracts are the contracts. However, from time to time, people do extra work, and I defined it at least, and I kind of tracked my notes from the last time, on a temporary basis for a defined task or tasks not in their job description for a defined period of time. I don't know that we discussed a defined period of time here last time, but it just made sense to me that if this is not necessarily a one-time, it could be given every year, but kind of a one-off situation, it ought to be for a defined period of time.
Councilor Kadim.
So I think, you know, on a temporary basis makes sense, for a defined period of time makes sense. The only question or concern, or I guess hesitation that I have is for a defined task or task not included in their job descriptions. And the only reason I say that is when we get to job description, we have a catch-all, right, as other duties assigned, right? So, and I don't know how we address this, but how do you draw that fine line between other duties as assigned and, you know, something that's not truly in your job description, right? So, I mean, at some point, there are things that you can't catch every single job responsibility or duty in a job description. You can try, you can attempt, but there are certain things that come up, different requirements that, you know, are gonna be part of a responsibility for a specific job description that you can't anticipate, but there is normal routine, and it can still be on a temporary basis and still meet the requirement for a defined period of time. You know, so I think about, you know, if we have a situation where, you know, I go back to the, you know, outstanding tax bills, right? The collections when they were at one time sitting on the collector's desk, and you know, you needed people to open up the mail and process it, right? So that it's a different process, but to me, you should be able to go to the treasurer's office and says, we need to fill this in. I don't think somebody should receive a stipend for it. I think if you have the time within it, it's other responsibilities assigned to it. Now, somebody can make an argument, well, no, I need to get a $2,000 stipend because you're asking me to open up mail and process it in Munis, and that's not necessarily what I do, but I go into Munis every day, and I'm on part of the financial team, and even though I'm on the treasurer's side and not the collector's side. And maybe that's not the best example, but it's the only thing I can really kind of come up with right now. I just don't want to run into a situation where now everything that's not caught in the job description becomes something that you can justify.
Well, you're right.
Whether with a straight face or not, but can meet the, you know, justification point of, you know, 1, 2, and 3, okay.
Well, I guess-
It meets a temporary basis, it technically is not included in your job description, we check that off, and it is for a period of time, so now I can give you a $2,000 stipend, right, so that's.
Well, the problem with the catch-all is it's in there, kind of as an element of discretion. I'm not sure how much time it takes the individual who has to open the mail and sort it out. But, for example, I don't think anybody, except maybe in the busiest of offices, who has the job description you're talking about, doesn't have to answer the phone. I mean, I don't think somebody can sit there and say, well, wait a minute, my job is, you know, to sort the mail and put stamps on envelopes and watch the door. I don't have to answer the phone. That, to me, is kind of an easy one of other as assigned. You know, look, as you get into this, it's a little more complicated than you think, but this is either the end of the best we can do, or it's the beginning of a discussion. But when we were here last time, we were, you know, just kind of all over the place.
So I think the other option is that we agree and approve this definition, and we go right back to that all stipends have to be approved by the city council, and then we can ask the question on number 2, does it meet the defined task? And I think that solves the problem, so.
That raises-
Councilor LeBeau.
I yield.
Councilor LeBeau.
I'm just gonna repeat the same thing. I'm fine with this definition. I feel like it's more of a stipend being given to an employee than an employee asking for it, not that an employee wouldn't, but I see the reverse is happening. But as I stated at the last meeting, I'm not gonna agree to this unless it's any stipend. I'm not okay with the above 2,000. Because I could see that going, well, they're getting, you know, 1,900 for this, and then 1,900 for this, and that-
Well, I think perhaps
That whole problem
you're
with
gonna raise
discretion.
this issue, but it depends whether it's appropriated or not.
Do you yield, Counsel?
no,
You haven't yielded yet?
you can do it.
So just to address Council Kadim's point, I think that and we all know of instances when stipends have been given, but there was also some effort to track what's utilized within the union contract realms, where if someone is performing service out of rank, if they're doing a job that is normally done by someone else and they're being asked to do it, they would obviously be compensated at that rate of pay. So I don't know if that might help to address your concerns, Counselor, if they're performing how we define service out of rank. In other words, they're doing a job that normally belongs to someone else. They're being asked to do that job. While it may fall within that catch-all of other duties as assigned, it's common knowledge that what they're being asked to do is something that is routinely performed by someone else, and they're stepping in, and that might help to clarify that a little bit. And then the only other point I would make is that we are aware, when we were having our discussion about this, obviously it has to be, the funding has to be within the budget. So, I mean, we can't issue a stipend or provide compensation to someone if there isn't appropriate resources within the department's, in this case, salary block that allows us to make that payment. So it is subject to the financial appropriation within the budget as well, so.
I just think what happens, my opinion anyways, is I don't think we're concerned about the stipends within the contracts, that type of stuff. I just think that over the years, we had stipends inside contracts for uniforms and different little things. But then stipends came out of the union contracts and went to administrative employees. And that's where we started to see this to start to progress and, in some people's opinion, abused. So that when we're outside of those contract stipends, we started to come to this. So here we are where we're at, and I don't disagree with Councilor LeBeau. As far as contract stipends, I don't have a problem with them. Those are negotiated, they're out, they're visible, people can see them, no big deal. But as we can see over the last couple shots of this, we've gotten sort of sidelined, and we get, $10,000 stipends coming down, and you go, where did that come from? And we didn't have any control over that. So this all stems from that. So we're just trying to get control over those non-contracted, basically administrative stipends. We've been talking about it since I've been on the council. We've been trying to roll some of the stipends into salaries, and tonight we see it again, and I can't support that in this instance, so I don't know what we're gonna do with that. But again, that's where we are. So if we wanna talk about what a stipend is, that's fine. I don't have a problem with the definition, but I'm more in line with Councilor LeBeau, say, no stipends go outside of contracts, unless they're approved by the council, and that's basically where I'm standing from.
I guess the question comes up, if it's within the appropriation for a particular, a department. it
If it's
doesn't
listed
exceed
and
the
we vote for it,
appropriation.
if it's listed in the budget, and we approve the budget, then yeah, we've approved it. I don't have a problem with that. What I'm saying is as we go along here, we've had stipends come down in the middle of the year, and we just go, where did that come from? So, I personally, I'm just not in favor of stipends, as I've stated before, but in some cases, they're necessary. I understand that, and I wouldn't have a problem voting for a stipend in special situations, but they are special situations, and they're temporary in nature, and they should be for a defined period of time. So I'm good with the definition per se, but stipends in general just bug me, so.
Well, just to add, I would like to follow up on the judge's example. So he has a vacancy in his department, and so consequently, he's gonna have extra funding within that salary block. So there's a vacant position. He asked someone else in his department to perform those duties in the absence of the person that would normally perform them, which is what I was getting back to in terms of service out of rank, it's similar to that, it's not exactly that in the non-union realm, but then he would want to be able to provide a stipend to that individual to pick up those extra duties that belong to the person who may be the vacancy within the department. So all I'm suggesting is you may be able to get more comfortable with it if you felt that it was being used at a point in time where someone was clearly performing duties that were outside of their normal realm of responsibility, and specifically, as I said, I don't want to repeat, but I keep coming back to the same concept on the union side with service out of rank, where you're doing someone else's job, and so there's a compensation for it.
I
So that
understand
might
that.
help narrow it down. And again, in that case, the money would have to be in the salary block in order for you to be able to pay it. So it might give it a bit more definition, but it's just a suggestion.
Councilor Bo.
So in that example you just gave, I'm fine with that, but I'm fine with it if there's an ordinance in place saying it's gonna be approved, because, while that's perfectly acceptable and, would be expected, there's just been too many that aren't acceptable and aren't expected, and we've had changes in chief of staffs where there is extra money available, but the money isn't being used for the reasons that it should be used. So I would make it a motion to amend this to delete above 2,000,
To what?
just to strike out above 2,000, so it's just
So it's
required.
any stipend.
Any stipend be sent to the city council as an ordinance for approval.
A motion to amend the current resolution to any stipend.
Well,
item.
Well-
Okay, point
Can
of
we do that?
information, just, so I think we're here to draft an ordinance, so I think we're just giving directive to the attorney, so I think the motion would be to direct the Corporation Council to draft, obviously, an ordinance that, if we're okay with this definition, to include this definition, but that all stipends have to be approved by city council.
Whether there's funding
Right.
in a salary line item or not.
Anybody want to make a motion to, she makes a motion to, I guess, advise
Yeah.
Corporation Council
Motion to
to
table the matter?
I'll
With those
second
correct-
that.
all stipends,
All,
All
well, all stipends outside of,
contracts.
yeah, that was listed, ordinance, collective bargaining agreements, and contracts.
Unless they're within an appropriation.
No.
All right, well.
And if I could.
So,
I'm so-
so without,
I yield.
without, if we do that, unless it's, that means that when the budget time comes, we're gonna have to, if there's any stipends within that budget, we're gonna have to take each one of those stipends individually? If we're taking it out of appropriation, right? If it's,
No,
No.
I think if it's outside, it would require a list of, right, you would have to have a list of stipends that would have to be approved, and I understand what Corporation Council is saying, you need the appropriation, and that's what, number one, we would be looking for to make sure that there's funding appropriated. But just because there's funding appropriated, the logic behind this is that and we've got a number of them, so the city council through ordinance has to create job positions, right? So we agree on the job descriptions, we agree on the job position, we also agree on the salary. Okay, so we've set that. So now essentially what we're doing is we're saying, okay, now we need to agree on this, we're creating an ordinance that says that we need to agree on the stipends. That's just, it's not carte blanche that, because this is what we've been seeing. This is that you don't like the $60,000, and this is the reality of it, this is the black and white part of it. We want to get paid more, you go down to ordinance committee doesn't agree with it, city council doesn't agree with it, the ordinance still says 60,000, but you want 70,000, we're gonna give you a stipend, right?
Exactly.
That just circumvents the authority of the ordinance committee and the city ordinances and the control of the legislative body. I think regardless of there's an appropriation or not, I think the legislative body should have the authority to approve stipends, which are similar to salaries or pay scales that are associated with specific positions. And then obviously that would be subject to appropriation, because we don't want a deficit spend, that those be issued, and once that's approved, then it's approved. That's just my take, I know people will disagree with it, it's unfortunate that we're at this position to have to deal with it, but
I think it's a little more
It's,
complicated.
can we get, I wanna get,
Yeah, I just have
Mrs.
one
Sahadi.
question. So we have several people that have stipends at the moment, particularly in the council's department as well as the city clerk's department. Would you want them all listed as part of the ordinance, or the fact that they are listed separate already in the budget
Well,
would be sufficient?
So I think if we already know.
So you know who I'm talking
So-
about
right, so-
particularly.
It'd be moving forward.
No, so I think, in my mind, and just as one counselor, I think if you've got stipends that are very specific, right, so, and they're not subject to a specific person, you can say, okay, custodian tax title, and I know it's rolled in, it just keeps coming back. The custodian tax title will have this stipend associated with it. The city clerk, or,
clerk.
you know, the
Right,
city council
clerk.
secretary will have
Exactly.
this stipend associated with, because they know exactly that's what it's for the meetings and things like
Would you want
that.
that rolled into this ordinance as part of the
I
language?
guess we could, yeah.
Well, I think we're gonna be involved in the three-stage process, but I think I understand what you're trying to accomplish. I'm not sure you can accomplish 100% of what you're trying to accomplish within the charter and the ordinances with respect to the executive power, legislative power, stipends, appropriations. But I'll give it a shot, and we can talk about it again.
Well, I'm accomplishing what I can accomplish,
I think we had a motion to table, right?
and I appreciate that.
A motion for Corporation Council to draft an ordinance
Well, we're discussing it, we're gonna table it so he can try to draft it,
and
so.
then table
I
it.
think Counselor Kilby had a motion to table, is there a second?
Second.
Motion to table is made and seconded, all those in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Passes. I'll make a suggestion, it depends on what the committee wants to do, that we take 15 out of order, and we have,
Let's make that motion.
So moved, second.
okay, motion to take 15, motion to take 15 out of order has been made and seconded, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay, next motion, the next piece of business is proposed ordinance report on the Special City Charter Committee, which referred 5/28/19. What's
I was just gonna alert the chairman that I have to leave at 7:00 to be in another meeting, so,
Okay, so you want to try and take some things real quick, see if we can get, is there anything out here that,
well, the two that were added on.
the salary adjustments?
Do you wanna withdraw that motion to take 15 out of order, no?
Yeah, we'll withdraw that motion.
You withdraw, Brad?
Yes.
A motion has been made to withdraw the 15 out of order, so we can make sure we stay on our time
Thank you,
schedule.
Mr. Chairman.
That was a motion made, seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right. Let's go to,
12.
11 is the next one, unless you wanna take something out of order.
I'm gonna take 12,
Which ones do you have to
13,
speak on?
12.
12, 13, and 14 out of order.
So moved.
Motion to take 12, 13, and 14 out of order has been made, second.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, number 12 is proposed ordinance amending salary schedule for non-union positions. Number 12 on your hit list.
So, Counselor, in front of you should be a list of 4 positions with regard to the increase in the ordinance. To the far right of that list are the requests made by the departments as a result of the increase in the ordinance. So the first one actually was a request of the city council president to increase the principal clerk position. It's currently not to exceed 35,000, and it is proposed to go to not to exceed 40. The second one is the Commissioner of Recreational Facilities and Director of Recreational Facilities. That is currently at not to exceed 75, and is requested to increase to not to exceed 78,625. That's adding a $2,500 additional amount of money to that individual's salary for attendance of nightly meetings. The third is a parking clerk, Director of Traffic and Parking, that is currently at not to exceed 70, with a proposal to go to not to exceed 73,550 for the same reasonings. And then lastly, the Director of Emergency Management Agency, this is a part-time position. It's currently at $20,000 per year. It's proposed to go to $22,250, and that is a request of the chief.
I just have just a real quick question here on the, two of these, the one at 75,000, the one at 70,000. Did they not just receive major raises, both those positions?
Those positions were increased in the prior year. Those ordinances were increased.
Considerably.
I don't remember the exact dollar amounts, but
And this $2,500 increase is a former stipend, getting back to that?
No, those individuals were never compensated for attending the night meetings and serving as clerks, one of the traffic board and one of the park board. So, and we have created instances where people have received additional compensation for serving as clerk of committees, most notably, city council, so again, it was for comparable duties that are compensated in one capacity but not in another. So it would standardize the fact that there would be additional funds, monies provided for the duties of attending their respective boards and keeping minutes and serving as clerks.
That's
for
gonna
those.
eliminate that. This is gonna just incorporate it back into
Well,
the,
that was, yes, because as we all know, our Director of Financial Services is not a fan of stipends, and so she would prefer that it simply be added to the base and that the job duties be added to the job descriptions in that particular case.
So what we're saying
you
is
could
that-
call them stipends for being clerk of committees, being clerk of traffic board and clerk of park board. We could do it that way, but we felt it was probably just as well to roll it into the base. But it is for those specific duties that are compensated in other circumstances for similar responsibilities.
so I just have one simple question. Is, you had something?
No, I just wanted to go back to your other question about the increases last time.
Yeah.
All right, so we had, in the case of the Director of Recreation, I'm sure I'm abbreviating that title, but she had been getting a service out of rank, serving in a different capacity for many years. So
Never
the
had the
increase was actually rolling it into that base, so she's actually being compensated without that service out of rank element. And in the other case,
it was an increase.
it was an increase, right? In the case
So
of
what
parking.
just doesn't,
director.
and this is where we get into the stipends and when we get into that conversation. All right, so what we basically have here, when we change we've got the Commissioner of Recreational Facilities and Director of Recreational Facilities, which I guess used to be the Park Department, basically, who is hired by a board, correct?
No, she's actually hired as an employee of the city of Fall
But she serves
River.
the board.
Yes,
So
she
she's not
serves.
technically a department head, because the board is basically the department head.
Yeah, the park is set up separately. It's a different form. That's why, that's hence her title, Commissioner. I mean,
Right.
it's,
And
it's established under
basically,
a different.
traffic's the same thing, because you have a traffic board.
Correct,
right?
yeah, correct.
Board of Assessors, the assessors, same. kind of
Correct,
thing.
yes, correct.
So my question is why do I have to pay the Director of Recreational Facilities, who works for the board, to show up to a meeting? I don't understand that. I don't understand why I have to pay a person who is hired by the traffic board to pay them additional funds to attend a meeting.
Well,
That makes no sense to me. It just doesn't. I don't
again,
get it.
Council, they're not hired by their respective boards at all. They're hired.
So they don't have to
but
go to those
they're-
meetings?
But
Tell
they
them not
do
to
have,
go?
that's the point, Council. They do have to go to the meetings and they do
They
have
didn't
to
show up.
serve
If I
as
told them to show up,
clerks.
whether I gave them $2,500 or not, they didn't show up, I'd fire them.
Well, but they don't have the right to terminate either, Council. It's a little bit unique. I mean, the park board can't terminate their, any of their employees, and
But that
neither
is their
can
authority.
the traffic board. So, again, Counselor, it was an attempt to just standardize. We have clerks of committees in other departments
Do
that
they work under
receive
contract?
stipend. Pardon me?
These people work under contract?
I don't believe they have contracts,
Maybe one
no.
of them, their ordinance.
They're by ordinance, yeah.
Go ahead.
No,
Councilor Dean.
I was just gonna go down the same line that the chairman was going down. And I just think this is the problem that we run into when we start making arguments for increases based on job responsibilities that people have, right? You get individuals to say, I don't understand why we need to, pay somebody to show up to a job that you were hired to do, right? And it's the right logic. I think the question really becomes is where are we in comparison to other communities, comparable comparisons, the workload associated with other departments, and is it an adjustment based on pay comparisons to people and what they need, right? Because both the Parks Director, or Recreational Facilities Director, and the Director of Traffic and Parking know full well that, and they have been doing this in the past, have been required to go to meetings, right? That's their job responsibility. We're in the public sector, and all the boards that you have to deal with have night meetings. That's the reality of the situation. I know it full well. And unfortunately, it's very time-consuming, and I think everybody at this table understands that and appreciates that. So I think we need to get away from that and trying to justify this for duties that they were hired to do. I think what we need to look at is, again, comparables to other communities, what other communities are paying in terms of, the city of New Bedford. Is it the same job responsibilities and requirements? Is it the same supervisory roles? Is there new tasks that have been taken on that this person is performing that would justify the increase to the positions? And I'm all for these increases if we can justify them. So I think I just need the justification. But to make the argument that it's because of meetings, I don't know that justifies it. I think that's has been and always will be the requirements that they have. So I would just ask in terms of comparables to other communities where these people fall in line. And I know Parks and Recreations might be a little bit more difficult because it's not necessarily a one-for-one across the board. But I know traffic and parking maybe, especially when we get to the city of New Bedford. I don't know about Taunton's a little bit different, but.
I can certainly do that, Counselor.
Okay. Yeah,
Councilor Boo?
Both of these department heads or directors have been doing these jobs for years, correct?
Correct.
Years and years and years, and Chair is correct, we did increase both of those salaries just last year. We have department heads all the time that have to come down to council meetings and are here for hours on end. I just see that snowballing into everybody asking for this. It's part of the job, it's what they've been doing all along. I agree with seeing if the salaries are in line with what other communities are paying, but even just the wording of it, to attend meetings sounds ridiculous because it's part of every director's job in City Hall. So I'm fine with tabling this for now, till we get that additional
motion.
information. I think
are we taking them separately?
I believe
Section
Well, I
one.
could, however you want to do it,
Okay.
fine with me.
Yeah.
Oh, just one other question. Mrs. Viveras had made a comment, clerks of committees, that they get a stipend for that. Could you just give me an example?
City clerk.
Except that it's a much different pay scale.
Yes.
Her salary is higher and her
Yeah, but
stipend
with
is
also
higher.
city council clerk, that's one.
Right.
City council clerk? Any others?
Right
The
now,
assistant clerk.
The assistant
Assistant
clerk,
clerk.
right now, I believe it's the city council office and the clerk's office are the only ones that are clerks of committees receiving stipends.
Okay. Any others?
So what do you want to do? You want to separate it?
Yeah, I'd like to separate. I'm not in favor of section 2, but we can talk about that. So if, again, I could just ask if, when you do the comparables, any additional tasks. So, for instance, I know the Director of Traffic and Parking is now taking over, the parking garages that weren't necessarily there, which I think would just justify the salary. So if we could just kind of get a snapshot of what the roles and responsibilities were maybe last fiscal year or the year before compared to what they're gonna be for this upcoming fiscal year.
No, I
And
agree,
then-
she's doing an
Right.
awesome job
Yep.
putting that together.
And the same goes with, the Parks and Recs, or the Recreational Facilities Director, so.
Yeah, and the only thing with that is when we start looking at these numbers, I find it kind of silly saying, Director Recreate to 78,625. I would just say 80,000 and just round it off, so we're not down here every other, and the same thing with the traffic is going from 70, I just round that at 75, and if that's what we're talking about, but I just don't like the whole idea of having a discussion about being paid to attend meetings. That just doesn't make any sense to me. I do understand it with smaller, not smaller, but other positions, which aren't as highly compensated, where we have to pay them because they're here, they might have to go to a lot more meetings than other people, so. Go ahead, Councilor LeBeau.
Yeah, just a final comment. I agree with Councilor Dean as well as the Director of Traffic has taken on those garages. That's not something that she was doing before. It is a lot of work. And her staff is going to be taking on patrolling those garages as well. That is something that would make sense for an increase. But, yeah, I don't know if it's just the wording or it's the fact that they've been doing it for years, so to ask for it now seems a little odd.
I certainly understand. I will look at the comps and compare the Director of Traffic and Parking to other communities that have parking garages.
I yield.
Okay, what's the committee's final, what do you want to do with this?
Can we table section 1?
All three positions or just the two in question?
Two in question.
Can we do that?
There's basically 4 positions in the ordinance, so you could table some,
All right,
add some.
that's fine. So so I make a motion that we table the parking clerk / Director of Traffic and Parking and the Commissioner of Recreational Facilities / Director of Recreational Facilities.
Okay.
A motion to table Commissioner of Recreational Facilities, Director of Recreational Facilities, and table Parking Clerk, Director of Traffic and Parking has been made. Is there a second?
Second.
Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Next motion. What do you want to do with section 2? You want to have a discussion on section 2?
Yeah, I'm just philosophically opposed to this position being a part-time position. I think when you go to other communities, it's the responsibility of somebody internally with the fire department to be it's usually the fire chief, the Director of Emergency Management. So I just have always been the city administrator. I've been opposed to it. It's an excessive amount of money, and I think it really is the responsibility of either a fire chief or a police chief to really kind of be the emergency management director of the city. So that's just my take, so I won't be supporting it.
Just a question, this is Mr. Aguirre's position?
Yes.
Yeah,
How long has it been at this position? Quite some time.
Quite some time.
Yeah, it originally started at, I believe, either like a $5,000, $15,000 stipend, but then it was like, now it's benefits and so, right, is that benefits on this
I
one?
believe so.
So you're paying somebody essentially a part-time, or 20,000, I mean, it's really, I don't know that it's full-time, right? I mean, how many hours do he may put in more than that, but what's the required hours?
I believe it's 24.
24 hours, so we're paying somebody 24 hours, which is essentially full-time by the state statute in terms of benefits.
Benefits, right.
I don't know. It's excessive in my mind. So.
So what do you want to do with section 2? So, Councilor LeBeau.
This council, though, approved those benefits recently, wasn't it? Well, in the last couple of years?
Yes.
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 So I'm in favor of this position. I'm completely opposite of Councilor Kadim on this one. And I know he puts in well over the amount of hours that's stated. I voted in favor of the benefits as well. I don't think that this is a big increase here for the amount of time that
Do you have a motion
he
pending?
puts in.
ma'am?
No.
All right, would you like to make a motion? We have, right now, in front of us, we have this ordinance, or proposed ordinance, without the Commissioner of Recreation and parking clerk. Do you want to make a motion with regards to the other 2 positions?
Yeah, I would, a motion to adopt. What would it be, a motion to adopt?
It would be for first reading as amended.
For first reading as amendment?
I'm in agreement with
Okay, we have a motion on the table to adopt and pass through first reading, omitting Commissioner of Recreational Facilities and the parking clerk, Director of Parking and Traffic. Any further comments? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Opposed. Which
Council Kadim opposed.
Section 2, right?
Two, yeah.
Yep, that's section 2 passed. The only thing that is the ones we tabled before.
Yes, so you're talking.
I heard you say
clerk,
pocket
Yep.
clerk. I
Clerk.
just wanted to make sure
Yep.
that's what-
those-
Clerk and
those are
EMS.
voting on First reading.
Clerk and EMS going through first reading,
And Sean,
right?
Do you want to be opposed to both of those?
No, I would just want to be opposed to section 2, so that's why I asked.
No, you did.
Okay. So if you could just,
Well, he's not opposed to city council clerk. He's got half a vote.
okay.
All right, I think the next two are pretty clear. 13 is salary schedule adjustment, list of positions referred 52819. Is there any discussion? These were all AFSCME and collective bargaining agreements. Am I correct in assuming that?
Yeah, so this is section 315A of the current ordinance, and this is really a housekeeping list of positions. If you were to read the current section 15A, I didn't bring it with us, but there were a number of positions that were left off. So we're simply striking the initial list and inserting this list, which is all of the positions that are currently in ordinance.
I have a motion.
Motion to adopt.
Motion adopted is made. Is there a second? Seconded. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Passes. On to, that's 13.
The next item
14
is,
is salary schedule adjustments and rate increases. This was referred 52819 also.
yeah, so this is section 315B. This section has not been updated for a number of years. I don't want to speak out of school here, but I think it was 2002 was the last time it was updated. We're updating it for the changes in the salaries for fiscal year 18, 19, and 20 to be in compliance with the budget. 18 is the 2% increase for all positions that are covered in subsection A, and 19 and 20 are 1.5%, and they are for all the positions covered in 301, except the deputy police chiefs, 302 and 304. Those contracts are currently under negotiation. So that's the police contract, the fire contract, and I believe the Teamsters.
Discussion?
just,
Council Kadim?
so the question, so the 2%, that's mimicking the agreements in the 1.5, that was in the agreements as well, so they're consistent? Is that
That's
what-
correct.
Okay.
That's correct.
I yield.
And we'll come back with 19 and 20 for section 315B when those other contracts are approved.
Motion to adopt.
Motion adopted is made. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed?
Motion to take item 15 out of order.
Is there a second? Take 15 out of order.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay, 15 is a proposed ordinance report on special city charter committee.
I don't think we should go.
Wait, so what are we doing here? What is this?
Okay, Michael.
Let me just see where we are in here.
You don't have 4 dogs, do you, anymore? 4 dogs? Yes. Hey,
I think we're gonna have the chairman of the, you were the chair, right? You were the chair of the charter?
Committee, yes,
Yeah.
the special committee.
Right.
Yes, I was.
We'll just have the chair of the special committee give us a synopsis of what this is all about. That's,
well, everyone knows Mike Myers. but
yeah, Mike
please
Meyer was a
state your name and
former
address.
city councilor. No need, but you can give us a little synopsis of what's going on here with the, please do.
Well, thank you for having me here this evening, and thank you for.
Mike.
Oh,
Mike.
thank you for trying to move me up on the agenda.
I was
earlier.
trying.
That's fine. So this special committee is a result of a provision in the charter whereby, after the charter passed in 2017, the intent was to form a committee to look at current city ordinances that may refer to the prior charter. That was one piece, and then the second piece of the provision was to fully implement the charter, meaning discussions on each provision so that everybody was aware of what the intent of those provisions were. So the committee did form. We met starting early this year. We had, I think, a half dozen meetings. Councilor Viveras served with me on that committee, as well as, I guess I'll mention everybody, Eric Poulin, Pat Casey, Councilor Camara, Steve Camara, and who else was on there? Who? Who? Oh, and Allison has served as city clerk. I believe Corporation Council, did you come to a meeting?
I was there at one meeting, I was
You attended
a resource person.
It was a resource.
I didn't need my resource.
We do now, though, as I get through this. But so what the committee did was, we went on the city website, essentially put the word charter in the ordinance section, came up with, I believe it was 21 instances where the word charter appeared in ordinances. The city clerk printed those ordinances for us. We went through each one. Out of those, we identified 5, no, let me see, 2, 4, 5, yes, that we felt needed further research, legal research by the Corporation Council. So we listed them in the report that we printed, and I don't know if you want to go through them at this point in time, but so let me give you the overview. There were a number that we felt did not need changes, because it just talked about the charter in general terms and it was still applicable. And then there was some that referred to a section of the former charter that definitely had changed in the new charter. And so we put together a spreadsheet for the ordinance committee, simply saying, you know, we felt that as a recommendation that you'd strike this section referring to the former charter and insert where it was in the new charter. And so we outlined that in the spreadsheet for you. And again, I don't remember, I have this spreadsheet here.
Everyone has
So
a
I'm
copy.
guessing out of 21.
Yeah, I think we got that in here,
missing
Charlie.
5, that would leave 16, maybe 8. Oh, I'll just count them up here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. We don't feel needs any changes. Now, this committee may look at them and decide that there needs, and then the other 7, I guess it is, if my math is right, you know, clearly needed to change to reflect the change in the new charter. So that kind of is the overview. Then we also put together more of a tool, time of taking effect. There's still provision in the charter that we recognize that everything in the charter couldn't be done, you know, at the date that it passed. So we put time of taking effect, so things that we felt, you know, could be put in effect in 2018, 2019, 2020. So we put together this chart for the council and for the
It's part of the packet, it's in the packet.
Yeah, it's part of the packet. Well, I don't know if yours is in color or not. but-
No, it's black and white.
Oh, well, I was, maybe that was, maybe I printed it in color. So that pretty much is the overview. So the spreadsheet that you have, is that one? Yeah, okay, just, it's called the ordinance spreadsheet. It lists the 21 ordinances, and it'll have language where it says votes, discussion, what I recommend, strike this, replace it with this, no amendment required, and then those that we felt needed more thorough research by a legal review, because some of them referred to state statute that we weren't sure was still in effect. Some of them referred to, well, actually, let me just quickly, if you don't mind. One referred to, there's an article in the current charter where we called out for public access to financial documents, but we did not call out loan orders specifically. And there's an ordinance 2-130 that calls out loan orders, so I don't even know if we're doing that still, so it needed to be looked at. There's also another ordinance that deals with the form Plan A, B, D, C of government. We feel that we should insert home rule charter in those instances. One of them, 2-271, deals with the police board. I served on the former police board for 2 years. Never in the 2 years, and I just recently resigned just to serve on this committee, so that I wasn't serving on
Two
two city committees. But.
According to ordinance,
What's that?
according to ordinance. They could,
According to charter.
John, I'm saying.
Yeah, according to charter. That's a board that we never met. That's a paid board, talking about stipends tonight. That's a paid board. I was fortunate that both police chiefs allowed me to be involved in new hire interviews and allowed me to be involved in promotion interviews. So I felt I was, but short of that, I think that's a board that this city council really should look at. I don't know if there's other paid boards that are meeting, or not meeting, I should say, they're getting paid. And it's not a lot of money, but you know, it all adds up. And so I'm here tonight to really ask, and I put this in the report, ask this committee to look at, is there a value to having this board any longer? If not, if it does, I don't believe it serves any purpose. One time I understand it served a very vital purpose, but, you know, now that we have a, contract chief, it probably doesn't serve any purpose. So, and are there any other boards? And we did put language in the charter to ask the city council to look at the boards on a regular, every 5 years, to see if there's any value for these boards. So that's one of the items. Again, there was an ordinance here that dealt with some state acts that, I don't know if they're still applicable or not. And then there was one that dealt with the school committee and their powers, and the ordinance says that the school committee has the power to select the superintendent, which the current charter says, but then it says other employees and fix their compensation.
That's old,
Yeah,
old
that's,
news.
so that's an old ordinance, and again, we felt that that was something that Corporation Council and this committee should look at, whether they're filling that role anymore, or they're hiring other employees and setting compensation. I didn't believe that.
93.
We didn't believe that was the case, but.
We're still going through that. We still have that whole ordinance review that UMass Dartmouth did.
Yeah, that's the litter.
No, there was a whole, wasn't there a whole,
Yeah.
yeah. We still gotta get to that.
Graduated.
Yeah, I know. It was a lot of work. We still gotta get that to us, but we'll get it. But I can see what you're saying. It makes a lot of
So that's
sense.
kind of the Reader's Digest version of what we did. We moved along quickly. I think this committee would have had a lot more value had it been formed right after the charter. I think some of the road speed bumps that we've had with the charter could have been prevented. We could have had some substantive discussions about intent and what the provisions meant. But anyways, it is what it is, and so that's what we did, and
Appreciate the work.
I think you have a roadmap. I feel comfortable, you have a clear roadmap as to what the changes, and then other than those 5 that I think needs a.
And we'll come back with those when we get
You know,
them straightened out.
Would be a proper motion to take, direct the Corporation Council to review.
Oh, actually, he's reviewed most of this.
Well, actually, you don't need to do that, because it's part of the creation of
What?
the committee. I'm supposed to
Just
be a
accept-
resource.
Yeah.
No,
Accept the
it's just
report.
The 5 that they've called out.
We have a proposed ordinance that was
You could
drafted.
adopt what,
What's been
everything
done.
but the 5 that have been
Right.
referred to me, you could table those.
That, and that's what this is requiring. That's what this is asking us to do, is to adopt the work that's been already done, reviewed.
Approved, yes.
Because it's just changing from saying, section 5 of the charter going to section, might be in section 6 or section 8A. It's just more of a,
But according to the chairman, you would recommend further review by legal department. On some
of the
items.
5. There's 5.
there's 5 items that we
There's only 5 discrete
specifically,
items that have been referred to.
Okay.
The rest of them, they're satisfied, you just.
yeah, it was clear cut that,
Okay.
this language needed to change, and then there was a number that we felt, it was vague, and it didn't refer to a specific provision of the charter.
Okay,
So
I misunderstood.
We felt, we just
So we're gonna-
recommend that you leave it alone.
But by the process, it's automatically going to you, Judge. We don't have to send it to you, those 5.
Those 5 are
You
not in
don't
the
have to
ordinance.
send the
They're not-
5 are already there.
They already,
Have requested, yeah, I've gotten that, I
All
just
right.
didn't do it yet.
okay.
Right, so we need to put this before the council so they can,
Motion to adopt.
to approve it. Motion to adopt has been made. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion has been made to adopt and second it. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Thanks, Mike.
Thanks for the work. Okay, that's 15. Now we go back to, the only outstanding thing is 11, right? 11.
10, 12, 14, 15.
Yeah, we did those, right?
We did those.
Yeah, we did those.
So
Okay.
just 11 left.
11, resolution to discuss establishment of an ordinance regarding panhandling, street corners and intersections.
Yeah, that's it.
If I may.
You may.
I'm laughing, it's not because it's funny. I'd ask you either to withdraw the resolution or table it indefinitely. And the reason is, because I think most of you know, we are engaged in litigation brought by the ACLU, challenging the state law, which is against panhandling. What you probably don't know, although I think it was in the paper, is that the district attorney has decided that he's not going to enforce that law. He thinks it's of, I think he said, doubtful or dubious constitutionality. And he, on behalf of his office, as one of the defendants, has agreed to an injunction whereby he will not enforce that law, will not, if Fall River Police arrest people, will not prosecute those arrests. And the judge, because we kind of got caught in this trap, we said, well, look, it's a state law. We should be allowed to enforce it. There's a preliminary injunction against us from enforcing the law. Now, the Attorney General, who was asked to represent the district attorney, has declined to represent the district attorney, declined to intervene in the action, and has said, but not written, that that office believes the law is unconstitutional. So they're not going to support the state law. My suggestion as to why it should either be withdrawn or tabled is, at some point, this matter is going to go before the Supreme Judicial Court. And as part of my representation of the city, I'm attempting to frame a way to do that where our police officers, who were also named, will be eliminated from the lawsuit, and will go up on some sort of a agreed basis where we will say, look, the statute is constitutional, the ACLU will say it isn't, the SJC will probably take a year and a half, make a decree that it's legal or illegal, and then, based on what they say, we can phrase an ordinance that probably will pass constitutional muster. Where we are right now is whatever we do is probably subject to challenge. The challenge, by the way, is that the state statute unconstitutionally limits content of what these guys are saying, i.e. give me money, I'm homeless, which is protected, and not conduct. Our position is, no, it's conduct to stand on an island and ask somebody. But that's not exactly the short form of how complicated it is, and I think if we go out on a limb and adopt our own ordinance, we're just frankly asking for trouble that we can avoid if we wait for the SJC.
No, I still think that this is a proper discussion to be having. I'll let Councilor Kadim sponsor the resolution to speak, but I'll have some comments to say on this also.
I know when I originally sponsored this, I thought I saw Pam on the street corner and she threw a pineapple at me. I believe that's what transpired, but
Might happen tonight.
And I agree with you, and I think the reason I drafted the resolution the way I did was because I knew it would be challenged by the ACLU and that it was unconstitutional to go after the panhandlers themselves because it's been determined by the Supreme Court that they have the right of freedom of speech, and that is freedom of speech. So the approach that I was taking is not to address the panhandlers, so the panhandlers have the right, but it's, you obviously, in my mind, if we cut off the supply of what they're looking for, then they're not standing on the corners. And the ordinance that what I'm looking for is to make it illegal in the city for somebody who is operating a motor vehicle to give change while operating a motor vehicle, right? So if I am a driver and I can no longer give money to a panhandler, then there's no reason for them to stand there. And the enforcement is not on the panhandler, the enforcement is on the individual who's operating the motor vehicle, right? So if you cut off the supply of money going to the panhandlers, then you essentially eliminate the panhandlers. That was my intent of moving it forward. And I think, the state of Rhode Island was attempting to go down that road as well. I'm not even sure where they stand. I don't think it's been challenged by the ACLU because, again, you're not going after panhandlers, the individuals standing on the corners, so.
I would just suggest that that'll be constitutionally challenged as well. Because
Yeah,
we'll have,
I've had extensive discussions with them, many more than I've had with the Attorney General. And yeah, I think it will. The reason I suggested waiting, and it'd be a little bit of a wait, is, as you know, and I think probably Sean's read cases in his capacity, if and when the SJC rules on the question of the state statute, very often they'll give you a hint that if it said this, that will be okay, but it didn't, so it would give us a better handle on how to constitutionally phrase the restriction on donations or whatever they are to people standing on traffic islands.
I got just a specific question. What if you just prohibited it entirely? No one can stand there.
Well, I think
We do it on the highways. We can't have horses and bicycles on a highway. What if you said for every exit and entrance from a public safety standpoint? Public safety, I'm not talking about panhandlers. Public safety, you're not allowed to accumulate or coagulate, whatever you want to say, at any of those junctions.
The problem is that that's
or busy
that's
intersections.
the way the statute originated, and that's the defense that I had hoped the Attorney General would step in and say, yeah, we're going to at least defend the statute. The position Fall River's in is unfortunate in that we're just the police department that enforces or tries to enforce the law, and the Attorney General is the one who's saying, well, no, we don't think the law is valid. So we're betwixt and between, which is why it's very difficult tonight for me to suggest at this juncture, yes, if we do X, it will pass constitutional muster, but if we do something else,
Yeah,
it
we don't
won't.
have that yet. Councilor LeBeau?
So we put this resolution in well over a year ago, knowing at the time that the ACLU was winning lawsuits everywhere. I'm not sure, and it was to be put in for a discussion of what possibilities there were, if there were any, so we wouldn't be involved in a lawsuit. I'm just curious as to, did this police action that the city is being sued for, did it happen all at once? Did something spur it?
Well, it happened, they have challenged, I think, 43 arrests. And what happened was they have been looking for a vehicle to attack this ordinance. At some point, the DA was dismissing all of these cases. At some point, Fall River, perhaps among other communities, but Fall River got aggressive arresting these people, brought them to court, indicated to the district attorney that we would like these cases prosecuted, and then the kind of aha moment for the ACLU was, okay, now we have the vehicle we needed. We've got a community enforcing this law consistently and constantly. So that's what happened.
But they've been suing cities, not just waiting on us, they've been suing several cities for
Who?
the ACLU over the past 2 years, I'd say.
More.
I'm not aware that they've challenged.
Worcester was one of them, I know Worcester was
Well, Worcester was
early on.
Worcester was a different ordinance. Worcester was kind of out on its own hook because they had their own ordinance. The ACLU challenged it. The ACLU also got several $100,000 in legal fees, which is almost unbelievable. But that was a different situation than ours.
Because the police were going by the state law?
In
their
Worcester,
arrests?
they were going by their own
They had their own.
ordinance,
But in Fall River, we were going on state law?
by the state law. That's what's
So my
so,
question is, were these arrests that, that brought it to their attention, were they all in one period of time?
well, no, they were over several months. There were two named defendants who were the people that were the most often arrested. I'm not sure there weren't others, but one's name is Treeful, and the other one is either Cadero or Carrero. The file at this point is only about this thick. I don't want to discuss too much about litigation here, but we're glad to show it to anybody who wants to see it. But I just suggest that as counsel, I suggest we wait if you don't want to.
I mean, when we put this resolution in, the intent wasn't to have the panhandlers arrested. The intent, which is because we knew that the ACLU was suing, the intent was to see what we could do, if anything. I'll yield.
So I just gotta, so not to drag it out, and then I can make a motion if the committee wants to table until we get further action, but I guess if we create an ordinance that would make it a violation to operate a motor vehicle and to hand out money out of the vehicle that is being operated in the middle of a public way, what recourse does the ACLU have? So that would include everybody. So that would, and obviously, that ordinance would in fact impact fill a boot, taggers, everything, not just panhandlers, but would affect everybody. But the reality of the situation is that it is dangerous. You've got people that are standing there holding up, and then you got individuals that are trying to go around vehicles and potentially get into car accidents. And so I'm not sure. So what we're addressing is the safety hazard from the operation of a motor vehicle.
Okay, well, let me just put it this way. I don't agree with the Attorney General that the current statute is unconstitutional. I agree, I believe it regulates conduct, not content. They don't agree with me. So put that aside, that's one lawsuit. You're right, if it is even-handedly applied, and now fill a boot and all the kids that collect and nobody can go on, that takes care of one problem, which is isolating the free speech rights of the homeless. On the other hand, I can't guarantee you that the ACLU, which is reasonably clever about this stuff, won't somehow perceive that it's really targeting the homeless who now have no means of supporting themselves and bring an action. Frankly, if you wanted to do that, and I'm suggesting you don't, I would try to phrase an ordinance that's constitutional, and then, of course, they've got nothing but time, and I didn't realize this until I started to deal with them. I thought they were funded somehow by, contributions, which they are in part, but they're also funded by getting legal fees from the communities that they sue. And one of the things I've tried to do, and so far we've been pretty successful, is put this case in a situation where if there are legal fees against Fall River at all, and there shouldn't be any, they'll be limited, because we're challenging, we're not conducting any discovery, we're not challenging anything except the very basic tenet that the law is constitutional. We say it's constitutional.
Right. And I just think if we drafted, the fill of boots, the fill of cans, or even the panhandlers would then have to go into parking lots where vehicles can pull in, stop from operating in a public way, and then give the money and then pull
Well,
out.
look, then maybe-
Which at that point, now it's up to the private property owner to make a determination if they can or cannot be there, right? So that's,
And maybe the organizations that filled the boots will say, well, wait a minute, why are you picking on us? Or maybe the,
it could be, but
Look-
I think this comes, at least from my standpoint, the ordinance is more for safety of the operational of the vehicle.
look, that's the absolute justification
Say it
for the
again on the
ordinance. So,
Yeah, but in this case, and I think I understand what you're saying, is because it's a Massachusetts law and that's what we're going after, we really don't have, at least we don't believe we have a whole lot of liability on that side, just whether it's constitutional or not constitutional.
That's
So we're
right.
better off
They have
waiting for
sued
that.
members of our police department, but I'm reasonably confident I can get them removed.
So why would we want to complicate it by passing another ordinance and have them start to enforce that ordinance, and now that just complicates the whole case?
That's what I'm saying.
Wait, so I think that's where we're going with this. So, Council Kadim, do you have any more? Or would you like to make a motion, or what would you like to do? It's your resolution, it's up to you.
Well, I guess I'll try to make a motion that we authorize Corporation Council to try and draft a constitutional ordinance pertaining to the operational,
The safe operation of vehicles.
Safe operation of vehicles as it relates to providing monetary contributions or donations or whatever you may to any individual, whether it's Philaboo, Panhandlers, Little League associations, things like that, and then go there and have a further conversation as to whether or not we think it.
There's a motion to, we're going to advise the Corporation Council to try and draw up some kind of constitutional.
I'll try.
Okay.
Well, it's just a motion. I don't know if it's.
There's a motion. Does anybody second that?
Well, with respect to Mr. Kadim, I'll just say that, I'm going to follow the advice of Attorney Macy. And if you think about it, the resolution, Sean, a good intention that you put in, says panhandlers. It doesn't say public safety, cars.
No, it says many vehicles stop causing public safety hazards.
But it looks like the intent is to target the panhandlers.
Yeah, I mean, the intent is that's the big piece, but that also, I don't mean to cut you off,
No,
I'm sorry.
it's okay. So I'll,
So you don't want to second it. Is there anyone who wants to second his motion to advise council?
To say it again?
He had a motion, he made a motion to advise council to try and draw up a constitutional ordinance regarding public safety and money from
Regarding the vehicles.
vehicles, correct?
And then it would come back to this committee?
Yeah,
I'll
just,
second it.
yeah, motion was made and seconded. Any further discussion? Well, first we'll go with this one, then we'll go from that, all right? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Oh, what are you?
oppose.
I'm opposed. You're opposed. Motion failed. Yeah, we can do a roll call if you like.
What's the count? Did it fail? Just kidding.
Good, a roll call. We'll do a roll
No,
call.
it's okay. We don't need a roll call.
Oh, it's
I knew it- I
3-2
knew it was gonna
failed.
fail. I was just
3-2
throwing
failed. Okay, now, what are we doing with the current resolution?
table.
Motion to table.
Motion to table has been made. Is there a second?
Start throwing pineapples.
Second? Where's the second?
There's one.
Somebody say second, please.
Second.
Second. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? None.
Motion to
Table.
adjourn.
Motion made to adjourn, second?
Second.
Seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Committee on Ordinance is adjourned. Thank you very much.